I'm Emma Carter, 30 years old, second daughter lawyer, always the good child in the family, learned to be silent and patient since childhood. At my father's 60th birthday party, amidst the laughter glasses of wine and cheers, his hand slapped me across the face like a gunshot. The whole room slowed down. The laughter faded, leaving only the sound of my heart beating deeper and stronger. Someone whispered, "Emma, just breathe. Focus." But all I could feel was the smoldering fire inside me starting to flare up. If you love real-life stories, chilling revenge, and dark family secrets, hit that subscribe button now. You're about to step into a world where the truth is far more terrifying than fiction. I didn't hear the music anymore. I didn't hear the clinking glasses or the murmured congratulations or the piano melody. My mother insisted on hiring a professional to play. All of it faded the second my father's palm collided with my cheek, sharp explosive echoing through the Carter family ballroom like a gunshot. Time didn't just slow, it warped bent. Twisted. The chandelier lights above me flickered in my vision as if someone had dimmed the world to a single trembling spotlight. Emma. Someone whispered my name. Just breathe, focus. But I couldn't. Or maybe I could too much. Every breath cut deeper. Every heartbeat sounded like a countdown. My face burned with heat, with humiliation, with the sudden awareness that every pair of eyes in that glittering room was fixed on me. I tasted copper in my mouth, though I wasn't sure if it was blood or just the bitterness rising in my throat. The room was filled with over 100 guests, family friends, business partners, political donors, distant cousins. But it might as well have been empty. All I saw was my father, Richard Carter. 62 today. Tall, silver-haired, the embodiment of American success story, dressed in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my rent for 3 months. A man who controlled every room he stepped into. A man who taught me from childhood that silence was safer than truth. His hand was still raised halfway as if he hadn't caught up to the fact that he'd actually struck me. "Apologize to your sister," he commanded. Voice low, controlled the way he spoke to his employees when he wanted to intimidate without raising his volume now. But my sister Olivia was standing behind him, tears shining in her eyes. Perfect tears, soft, trembling, delicate, the kind that made people rush to comfort her. She looked like a wounded angel in her champagne silk dress, her blonde hair curled in perfect waves, the kind of woman magazine covers described as classic beauty, and the kind of woman who knew exactly how to manipulate a room. I didn't do anything I managed to say, but my voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone else. "You ruined my engagement announcement," Olivia whimpered, her lower lip quivering. "In front of everyone." "Emmy, why would you do that?" I hadn't ruined anything. I'd simply corrected a detail, one small detail, that she had deliberately lied about. The real story behind her new big project, the one she'd proudly announced before cutting the cake, wasn't hers. The documents, the legal structure, the investment model, those were mine. My work, my research, my nights spent drafting and analyzing while she posted photos of herself in expensive cafes using filters that made her look ethereal. I had mentioned it lightly, almost jokingly, but Olivia seized it like a weapon and turned the entire room against me with a single wounded look. And then came the slap. The whispering started again, soft, poisonous, the kind that crawls under the skin. "Did you see? Richard lost it? Emma always has an attitude. She embarrassed Olivia. Drama always follows her." My mother Diane moved toward me, her eyes wide with shock and fear. But she stopped halfway, as if the invisible rules of the Carter family froze her in place. She looked at my father for permission before she looked at me. And he didn't give it. That hurt more than the slap. I stood there, cheek throbbing, pulse pounding. Silence. Slow down. Breathe. Deeper. The words looped in my mind, a rhythm without meaning, like leftover fragments of meditation apps I had tried but never completed. This night had been carefully orchestrated. Because nothing in the Carter family happened spontaneously, the ballroom at the estate in Connecticut had been decorated in gold and ivory. The theme was legacy and leadership, a phrase my father repeated so often in interviews. It felt like a punchline Olivia had flown in her favorite photographer to capture candid pictures that were anything but candid. A chocolate fountain cascaded near the window. Servers in white gloves moved between guests offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. And in the center of the room, my father's expensive, towering birthday cake decorated with edible gold, a monument to his ego. "This is not who we are, Emma," he said, in that cold, polished voice he used only when he wanted to show dominance. "You will not disgrace this family again." Something snapped inside me. "Disgrace," I whispered, but the word grew louder as it left my mouth. "I told the truth. That's all." "It wasn't your place," he shot back. Olivia sniffed dramatically. "She hates me. She always has." I blinked. Of all the lies she told, that one hurt in a strangely tender way. I never hated her. I hated the role I'd been forced to play beside her. The comparison, the silence, the shadows. "Enough," my father said. "Emma, leave now." A few guests gasped. My mother pressed a hand to her lips. Olivia hid behind her fiancé, Andrew, a tall, handsome corporate strategist who looked as confused as he was uncomfortable. He barely knew me, but he already knew enough to stay out of Carter family business. My hands shook as I reached for my purse. The room tilted again. I heard the piano player stumble over a note. A couple tried to pretend they were still enjoying their drinks. Someone whispered, "Poor Olivia." No one whispered, "Poor Emma." I turned and walked toward the exit. Each step felt like wading through thick fog. My skin tingled. My vision sharpened unnaturally, as if my brain had entered some hyper-focused state. Repeat. Breathe. Focus. The words circled like a mantra. Just before I reached the door, someone grabbed my wrist. I jerked around, expecting to see my father again. It was Ethan Blake. Ethan, my old friend from college, now a journalist. Tall, warm eyes, slightly messy. Dark hair, always wore shirts that looked like he hadn't meant to iron them, but somehow pulled it off. A man whose career had taken him into corruption investigations and political scandals. A man who saw things, understood things. Other people dismissed. He squeezed my wrist gently. "Hey," he whispered. "Are you okay?" I wasn't, but I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. Ethan looked over my shoulder at the golden room behind me, at my family frozen like a portrait of wealth and hypocrisy. Then he looked back at me with something sharp and knowing in his gaze. "Come outside," he said. "Breathe, slow down. Let your mind settle." The words struck something deep in my chest. They weren't just comforting, they were grounding, steadying, almost hypnotic in the way he said them. Not controlling, but freeing. As if he wanted me to remember something I had forgotten, that I was allowed to exist outside of them. Outside of that house. Outside of their expectations. We stepped onto the balcony overlooking the garden. The air was cold, fragrant with night-blooming jasmine. The sky above was a dark velvet scattered with stars. For a moment, the world felt real again. Ethan let go of my wrist, but he stayed close. "What the hell happened?" I let out a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "Family happened." He didn't smile. He studied my face. He noticed the swelling on my cheek. His jaw clenched. "He hit you." "He's hit me before," I said flatly. "Just not in front of 100 people." Ethan inhaled sharply as if the truth physically struck him. Then he said quietly, "Emma, this isn't normal." I looked away. "In my family it is." Silence settled between us, heavy but clarifying. I focused on the cold railing under my palms, on the steady rhythm of my breath, in, deeper, out, slower. Slowly, the fog in my mind began to clear. "I don't belong there," I said finally. "No," Ethan agreed gently, "you don't." And then he added with a softness that felt like a blade sliding cleanly through years of denial, "You never did." My eyes stung. I blinked quickly. "He thinks I'm ungrateful. He thinks he owns you." I laughed again bitterly. "Funny. That's exactly how he treats Olivia. As property, as a legacy piece. But she accepts it." I shook my head. "She doesn't know any different." Ethan studied me again, then lowered his voice. "Emma, there's something I need to talk to you about. I didn't want to bring it up tonight, but it concerns your family, your father, his company." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" He hesitated. Ethan never hesitated. "That development project Olivia announced tonight? he said slowly. The one you created, I've seen documents and financial trails that don't add up. What do you mean? I mean, he said softly, I think your father is hiding something, and I think Olivia might be involved, maybe without even knowing it. I froze, fingers curling around the railing. The cold bit into my skin. Ethan leaned closer. Let your mind slow down. Look deeper. Think clearly. The words washed over me like a calm current. Not controlling, empowering. You're smart, Emma. Smarter than all of them. You see things. I swallowed hard. What are you saying? He looked at me with something almost like fear or respect or both. I'm saying this isn't about a slap, he said. This is about something much bigger. I stared at him, the night air chilling, the heat still burning on my cheek. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. A new thought rose, steady and sharp, stronger than humiliation, stronger than pain. This is not the end. This is the beginning. My father's slap didn't silence me. It woke me up. I didn't go back into the ballroom. Once I stepped off that balcony, I walked straight through the side hallway, past the powder room where women touched up their lipstick and pretended not to hear screams, past the coat room where designer jackets hung like empty skins. My heels clicked against the marble in a steady rhythm. Step, step, breathe, breathe. Each sound felt like it anchored me in my own body again. No one followed. No one called my name. The Carter family knew the choreography. When there was a scene, you smoothed it over, smiled wider, poured more champagne, and pretended nothing happened. The show went on, no matter who bled backstage. Outside, the valet looked surprised to see me this early, but he hit it well. Money trains people to bury their reactions fast. Leaving already, Ms. Carter, he asked. Yes, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt emergency. He nodded and jogged off to fetch my car. I stood under the porte-cochere, the cold air wrapping around my bare arms, and let myself slow down. In, out, deeper. Slower. I focused on the way my lungs expanded, the way the air cooled the fire in my cheek. I imagined my thoughts lining up in a neat row instead of spinning in circles. My father had hit me again, but this time something was different. My phone buzzed in my clutch, a text from Ethan. Text me when you get home. And Emma, don't do what you always do. Don't pretend you're fine. I stared at the message a second longer than necessary, then slipped the phone back into my bag as my car pulled up. The engine purred. The leather smelled familiar, safe, in a way the house behind me never had. As I drove away, the mansion shrank in the rearview mirror. All that golden light, all that curated luxury. From this distance, it looked like a movie set. Fake hollow. A beautiful lie stretched over rotten beams. I should have been used to it. Growing up in the Carter house meant one thing above all: performance. At the dinner table, we didn't talk about feelings. We talked about achievements. Olivia's ballet recitals, Olivia's scholarships, Olivia's internships, Olivia's flawless engagement to a man my father approved of the moment he saw his resume. My accomplishments were acknowledged like footnotes. You did well, my father would say, eyes already drifting back to Olivia. Of course, we expected nothing less from you, Emma. Expectations were a cage and praise was the lock. I remembered being 8, sitting on the stairs, knees pulled to my chest, listening as my father rehearsed a speech for some business award. He'd pace the foyer, practicing his cadence, his pauses, the way he would hold the microphone. I'd close my eyes and memorize each word, his mantra: legacy, loyalty, leadership, repeat again, deeper, until the words didn't mean anything, just sounds. He used to hypnotize rooms full of investors into trusting him. One night I'd whispered to my mother, "Does Daddy ever get tired of pretending?" She'd flinched like I'd said something blasphemous. "He's not pretending, sweetheart. He's working. For all of us." "Is he working when he yells?" I'd asked quietly. "When he knocks over things?" She'd pressed a finger to her lips. "We don't talk about that. Just be a good girl. Don't provoke him. Breathe and count to 10 when you're upset. That's what I do." She had taught me how to control my reactions, not how to protect myself. Now, driving home alone, I realized how deep that training still ran. My face stung, my chest hurt, but my voice inside kept whispering, "It wasn't that bad. Others have it worse, just let it go." But Ethan's voice overlapped it, steady and clear. "This isn't normal," He thinks he owns you. I exhaled slowly, as if I could release both of those voices into the night. My apartment in Brooklyn was small by Carter standards, but it was mine. No maids, no massive portraits of my father in suits, no monogrammed towels. Just bookshelves, mismatched mugs, a sagging but comfortable couch, and a desk covered in case files. I tossed my heels in the corner, dropped my clutch on the table, and leaned both hands on the kitchen counter. My phone buzzed again. Ethan home. Me, yeah. Ethan want me to come by. Me, no, I'm okay. Ethan. That's the lie you tell everyone. Try again. Me. I'm not falling apart. That's the best I can do. Ethan. Good enough for tonight. Ethan. Tomorrow, coffee. I'll show you what I found. Me noon. The place near my office. Ethan deal. Sleep slow your mind down. You'll need it sharp. He knew me too well. Knew that left alone, my brain would replay the slap on a loop, each repetition cutting deeper. I took a shower, letting hot water pound against my skin, imagining it washing away my father's touch, his voice, his verdict, "You are a disappointment." I pressed my forehead against the tile and repeated softly, "That is not the truth. That is not my truth. That is his story, not mine." The words felt strange but necessary, like stretching a muscle I hadn't used in years. I slept badly. My dreams were jagged and fragmented. Olivia in a white dress, my father at a podium. Ethan holding papers that turned to ash in his hands. I woke with my heart racing, sheet tangled around my legs, sunlight slanting through the blinds. By the time I reached the cafe near my office, the lunch crowd had thinned. It was a small place with exposed brick hanging plants and the constant hum of quiet conversations. The barista knew my order by heart. Black coffee. No sugar. I liked the bitterness. It felt honest. Ethan was already there, seated at a corner table. Laptop open, a stack of printed documents beside his cup. He looked up when I approached, and his expression softened for a fraction of a second before he straightened, slipping into work mode. "Hey," he said, "how's the face?" "Still attached," I said. "So better than expected." He winced. "Emma." "I'm fine." I cut in. "We're not here to talk about my cheek." He studied me for a moment, obviously wanting to push, then let it go. "For now." "Okay," he said quietly. "Then let's talk about your father." Just hearing the word father made my shoulders tense. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, concentrating on the heat seeping into my palms. Focus, anchor ground. "Show me," I said. He slid a folder toward me. "These are public records. Land transfers, shell companies, donations to political campaigns. Some of it looks clean at a glance, but when you slow down and follow the dates..." He tapped a line with his finger. "Things get interesting." I scanned the pages. Company names I recognized. Carter Holdings, Carter Real Estate Development, and others. I didn't. Helios Consulting, Horizon Impact Partners. These are all connected to him. Directly or indirectly, Ethan's voice dropped. "That project Olivia was bragging about last night, the Sustainable Urban Living Development. The main investor is a shell company that's been used in 3 separate corruption cases in the last decade." I looked up sharply. "You're sure?" "Absolutely." His gaze held mine. "I've been following Helios for a while. Dirty contracts, bribed city council members, zoning law manipulations. When I saw it tied to a Carter Holdings project, I almost didn't believe it. Then I saw Olivia posting about it on social media, calling it her big achievement. I grimaced. She probably doesn't know where the money comes from. My father doesn't give her details, just spotlights." Maybe Ethan said, "Or maybe she doesn't ask questions because she likes the spotlight too much." His tone wasn't accusing, just pragmatic. Still, it stung. I flipped to the next document. A property deed. The address tugged at something in my memory. "Wait," I murmured. This was the lot my father almost lost 10 years ago, the one he called his miracle save. He said a private investor came through at the last minute. Helios Ethan confirmed, the same miracle investor that keeps showing up where regulations get bent. A cold, heavy feeling settled in my stomach. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said calmly, "I'm about to publish a story, a big one, and your family is going to be at the center of it." The cafe noise receded for a moment. It was just me, Ethan and the stack of papers between us like a loaded weapon. "You want me to help you take him down?" I said slowly. "I want you to understand what he is," Ethan replied. "You can decide what to do with that understanding, but I won't lie to you. Once this goes public, the Carters will never look the same again to anyone." I thought of my mother arranging flowers as if they were shields, of Olivia posing for photographers, building her brand as an empowered businesswoman. Of my father, shaking hands, smiling that perfectly calculated smile, promising ethical development, while money changed hands in back rooms. I took a sip of coffee. Let the bitterness spread across my tongue. Breathe in, out. Deeper focus. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "For now," Ethan said, "context, background. Anything that confirms what I've found or contradicts it." And he hesitated. "I need you to be ready, because when this breaks, they're going to look for someone to blame. Your father doesn't admit fault. He redirects it." "On to me," I said. It wasn't a question. Ethan didn't disagree. We spent the next hour going over the documents. As we talked, buried memories surfaced, hushed phone calls. My father took late-at-night meetings that weren't on the calendar, sudden trips to city council offices. I saw patterns where I'd once seen only random events. "When you slow down and look deeper, the picture changes." "Emma," Ethan said, finally closing his laptop, "there's one more thing, something I didn't expect to find." He pulled out a thinner folder and slid it toward me. "This isn't about the company, it's about your family." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" He hesitated, searching my face. "Have you ever seen your father's will?" I blinked. "No. I mean, I know he has one. His lawyer handled it years ago, but he doesn't exactly invite us to read it over breakfast." "If you had to guess," Ethan said slowly, "who do you think gets what?" I almost laughed. "Olivia gets the empire I get. I don't know enough not to starve, not enough to matter." He didn't smile. "That's not what the first draft said." "The first draft? I have a source," he said carefully, "who used to work for your father's law firm. He saw an early version of the will years ago. In that version, you weren't the footnote." "Emma?" His eyes locked on mine. "You were the main heir." The room shifted. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "That doesn't make any sense." "I thought so too," Ethan said, until I started thinking about timing. The draft my source saw was from about 12 years ago, before Olivia became the public face of the family, before your father started parading her at events, before he realized how useful she was for his image. My mind raced back. 12 years ago, I would have been 18, heading to college, quiet, studious, the daughter who followed rules. Olivia was already beautiful, already charismatic, but she hadn't become Olivia yet. "What changed?" I whispered. "That's the question," Ethan said. "And I think the answer is in that house, in his office, in whatever he keeps locked away." The image of my father's home office formed in my mind. Dark wood walls lined with shelves, a heavy desk with drawers he never let us touch. As children, we'd been told the room was out of bounds unless invited. Olivia rarely cared about boundaries. I had. Now that obedient little girl felt like a stranger. Ethan leaned forward, his voice lowering into something almost hypnotic. Not in a manipulative way, but in a way that cut through my panic and anchored it. "Listen to me, Emma," he said. "You don't have to decide anything right now. Just do one thing. When you go back there, and you will eventually pay attention. Slow down. Notice what you've trained yourself to ignore. There's a story hiding in that house, and it's not the one your father tells." "Are you asking me to spy on my own family?" I asked, but there was no real outrage in it, just weariness. "I'm asking you to stop being blind on purpose," Ethan replied softly. The words stung because they were true. On my way back to the office, my thoughts felt sharper than they had in years. The world seemed to tilt slightly like a picture frame, finally being straightened. I'd spent my life absorbing my father's narrative, repeating it, breathing it, sinking deeper into it until it felt like reality. Now, for the first time, I was stepping outside of it. That night, against my better judgment, I drove back to the estate. I told myself it was to check on my mother to make sure she was okay after the scene at the party. But as I walked up the stone steps, my pulse quickened for a different reason. The house was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. My parents' bedroom door was closed. Light spilled faintly from underneath my father's office door. I hesitated in the hallway, heart pounding in, out, slow down. I pressed my palm against the cool wood, listening. No voices. No movement. I turned the handle, unlocked. The room smelled like leather paper and his cologne. The desk lamp cast a warm, narrow pool of light over scattered folders. His chair was empty. Maybe he'd stepped out. Maybe he trusted the lock more than he should. I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me. My heartbeat was so loud it felt like it might give me away. I moved toward the desk, every instinct screaming that this was wrong, that I was invading a sacred space. But then another voice, quieter, steadier, rose inside me. This is your life too, your future, your story. You have a right to know. The top drawers were locked. Of course they were. But the bottom left drawer, the one I remembered him using most, slid open with a soft click. Files, contracts, investment portfolios, and at the very back, wrapped in a manila envelope with a red string, something heavier. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out. Richard Carter, last will and testament draft. The date in the corner made my breath catch. 12 years ago. My eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Words blurred, then sharpened as I forced myself to focus. To my daughter Emma Carter. I leave controlling interest in Carter Holdings. I stopped breathing, not Olivia. Me. The edges of the paper dug into my skin as I gripped it tighter. A buzzing filled my ears. Not from panic this time, but from a cold electric clarity. Something had changed. Something had made him erase me and replace me with her. And whatever that something was, it was the crack in the glass. The flaw in the perfect portrait, the beginning of his undoing. I slid the draft back into the envelope, back into the drawer exactly as I'd found it, then stepped away, pulse thundering, but mind strangely calm. In, out, deeper, slower focus. My father had rewritten his will, but he couldn't rewrite history, and I was done letting him write mine. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, eyes open in the dark. The city hum faint outside my window, and the draft of my father's will playing in my mind like a forbidden recording on repeat. The words rearranged themselves every time I blinked, but the meaning never changed once a long time ago. I was the heir, not Olivia. Me. Why did he change it? The question pulsed in my skull, steady, hypnotic. Why? Why? A rhythm, a heartbeat. A warning. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. Only when the first strip of pale light crept through the blinds did something in me finally click into place. I wasn't imagining things. My instincts weren't overreacting. This wasn't just a slap or a bad night or another episode of Carter family performance art. Something had happened. Something big. Something that rewrote the family's entire future. Something that erased me from it. And I was going to find out what. When my phone buzzed at 8:17 a.m., I didn't even look at the screen before answering. "You didn't sleep," Ethan said. It wasn't a question. "No, your eyes are probably red." "So what?" "So drink water," he said gently. "And eat something. You think clearer when you're not starving." I exhaled. "Is that why you called to tell me I'm dehydrated?" "No," he said, "I called to tell you I did more digging last night." I sat up and you're right. Something changed 12 years ago, dramatically. A shiver crawled up my spine. "Tell me." "I'd rather show you," he said. "Meet me in an hour, my place." He hung up before I could argue. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror while I brushed my teeth. My cheek was still pink, a faint outline where my father's hand had landed. The mark wasn't harsh anymore. It was subtle, almost invisible, but I couldn't look away from it. It felt symbolic, a stamp, a signature proof that he still thought he could control me. Not anymore. When I stepped outside, the air was crisp enough to sting my lungs. I breathed it in, anyway, letting it sharpen me, clear me, wake me. Breathe. Deeper. Slower. Focus. The words weren't my father's this time, they were mine. Ethan's apartment was small, messy, in a charming, lived-in way, the opposite of the Carter estate. Papers covered his dining table. 3 empty coffee cups sat beside his laptop. A whiteboard leaned against the wall, scribbled with dates. Arrows, company names, and circled words like Shell Corp, zoning permit transfer. He opened the door before I knocked. "You look..." He paused, searching for a word that wasn't insulting. "Determined." That's one way to put it. "Come in." I stepped inside. He locked the door, not out of paranoia, but out of habit. When you exposed corruption for a living, you learn to secure your perimeter. "Okay," he said, moving toward the whiteboard. "Here's what I found. 12 years ago, your father filed the first draft of his will. You were the primary heir. Perfectly logical. You were the responsible one, the steady one, the one who didn't chase cameras or men with perfect jawlines." I lifted a brow. Subtle dig at Olivia. Subtle, he laughed. "Not at all. Continue." He tapped a date on the board. "Then 11 years ago, not 12, your father revised the will. A complete reversal. That's when Olivia became the chosen heir." My pulse quickened. Why that year? What happened? That's what I wanted to know. So I cross-referenced everything. Big in your family's life at the time. Public records, social media news mentions. Most of it was the usual Carter stuff galas, charity events, business expansions. He trailed off. His expression grew serious. But one thing stood out. Something the public never really paid attention to. Something personal. I swallowed what? He handed me a folder. I opened it. Inside was a newspaper clipping from 11 years ago. A small article barely 4 sentences long. Easy to miss. Easy to forget. But the headline made my stomach drop. "Local teen in car accident on Carter property. No charges filed." The breath left my body. That accident. That night, that memory I'd buried so deep I'd convinced myself it wasn't real. I whispered, "This was Olivia." Ethan nodded. 17 years old, driving after a party. Not drunk. At least the report says no breath test was administered. I let out a bitter sound. Of course it says that. The boy she hit, Ethan continued, was 19. College kid local. He survived but barely coma for 6 weeks. Traumatic brain injury, lost his scholarship. His parents filed a complaint. A chill wrapped around my spine and my father made it disappear. "Yes, that's why he changed the will," I whispered. He needed Olivia to look untouchable, to be the face of the family, to erase anything that might tarnish her. "And you?" Ethan asked softly. I wasn't useful for his narrative anymore. I said I was replaceable. Ethan shook his head. "Not replaceable, just inconvenient." Silence filled the room, heavy, thick, charged. I pressed my fingertips to my temples. The memory came back, not clearly but enough to sting. Olivia crying hysterically. My father gripping her shoulders so tightly she shook. My mother telling me, "You didn't see anything, Emma. Promise me." I had promised. Because back then I still believed keeping quiet was what good daughters did. "And that's not all," Ethan said, pulling me back to the present. 7 months after the accident, your father made a large undisclosed payment to the boy's family. Through a shell company. The same shell company tied to Helios. My breath caught. He covered it up with money from criminals. Yes, or he accepted money from criminals to cover it up. I'm not sure which came first. I sat down slowly. He rewrote the will around the same time. Exactly. So, Olivia being the heir isn't about her being better. I said, my voice hollow. It's about her being his liability. Ethan nodded once. And you being disinherited isn't about your worth. It's about your honesty. My chest tightened, not with sadness but with something sharper, something colder. Resolve. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the girl watching from the shadows. I was the woman standing in the doorway holding the truth like a match. And I was ready to burn something down. At noon, I met someone I never expected. Laura Hill. Laura was one of Manhattan's top estate attorneys, famously ruthless, always impeccably dressed in tailored black suits that gave her the silhouette of a blade. She'd been my opponent in a case last year. I respected her, the way swimmers respect sharks from a distance. Ethan arranged the meeting. "You want me," Laura said without pleasantries, "to advise you on a possible will contest. Even though your father is still very much alive, I want to understand my legal standing," I replied. She studied me. Her eyes were sharp steel. "If the first draft was real, you had a rightful expectation. If you were removed without cause, and especially if coercion or manipulation occurred, you may have leverage." "Leverage," I repeated, "not justice." "Justice," she said, is a word journalists use. Leverage is a word lawyers use. I assume you want both." I exhaled. "I want the truth." "And what are you willing to do to get it?" she asked. For a moment I didn't answer. Then anything that doesn't make me become him. Laura's mouth curved. Not a smile, but an acknowledgement. Good, keep that line clear. You'll need it. She slid a binder toward me. I'll help you. But understand, once you start pulling threads, families unravel fast, and sometimes they unravel violently. A chill crawled over my skin. Why help me? Because she said simply, I hate bullies, and your father is one. The words hit me harder than I expected. A stranger saw the truth more clearly than my own blood ever had. That night, I went back to my apartment and sat at my desk staring at a legal pad. The empty page waiting like an invitation. I wrote one sentence at the top. What changed? 12 years ago. Beneath it, I listed every event Ethan and I had uncovered. Olivia's accident. My father's cover-up. The shell company payoff. The revision of the will. The shift in family dynamics. My relegation to the background. Olivia's sudden rise as his favorite. Then I wrote a second question. What is he still hiding? Because the will was just the beginning. The accident was a symptom, not the disease. My father didn't build an empire by playing clean, and he didn't rewrite his legacy because he felt sentimental. He did it because something terrified him, something big enough to rewrite inheritance, something big enough to erase me, something big enough to make a powerful man afraid. I tapped the pen against the page slowly. Tap, tap, breathe, focus, deeper. The rhythm helped me think. Ethan said to watch for things I'd trained myself not to notice, so I did. I replayed childhood memories, not like stories I'd been told, but like tapes I watched with fresh eyes. My father's moods, his injuries, the quiet tension in the house, the locked drawers, the late-night conversations with Olivia. The times my mother looked at me with something like guilt instead of love. And then something surfaced, fluid, slippery, like a shadow rising from the bottom of a lake. I remembered a night when I was 12. Olivia had come home crying. My father had shouted at her. My mother had held her. And I ignored, invisible, had stood in the hallway unnoticed. I remembered him saying something, a single sentence, a sentence that made no sense to me then, but now it felt like a puzzle piece snapping into place. I wrote it down, the words shaking as they left my memory. If this gets out, everything I've built will collapse and Emma will... She can never know. I stared at the sentence. My heart pounded. My breath quickened. My pulse roared in my ears. He wasn't hiding something from the world. He was hiding something from me. And whatever it was the reason he'd slapped me. It was the reason he'd erased me from the will. It was the reason he feared me more than he feared enemies or scandals. I sat back slowly, letting the realization seep into me deeper and deeper, until it rooted itself like truth. My father hadn't just hurt me. He'd lied to me. About the will, about the accident, about Olivia, about our family, about everything. And now he had no idea I'd finally stopped believing the story he'd trained me to repeat. This is not the end, I whispered to myself. This is the beginning. And somewhere in that mansion behind locked doors and polished lies, the truth waited for me to find it, along with the reason my father feared me knowing anything at all. And I was coming for it. The next morning, I woke with the uneasy sense that someone had shaken my soul during the night and rearranged everything inside me. I wasn't the same woman who'd left that golden ballroom after my father's slap. I wasn't the same woman who had stayed silent for decades, or the one who believed loyalty was a form of survival. Something had cracked open. And once you see the cracks, really see them, you can't go back to pretending the glass is whole. I showered, dressed, drank coffee I barely tasted, and drove toward the office with a kind of hyper-awareness that felt almost too sharp. Sounds were louder, colors brighter. Every thought clicked together, like puzzle pieces snapping into place. Focus. Deeper. Slow down. Look closer. The words pulsed in my mind. Not soothing, not hypnotic. More like directives. Instructions I was finally ready to obey. I couldn't stop thinking about my father's sentence from 11 years ago. If this gets out, everything I've built will collapse and Emma will... She can never know. The part he didn't finish was the loudest. She can never know. Know what? I wasn't going to wait for fate or my father to answer. Today, I was going to confront someone who'd lived inside that secret longer than I had. Olivia. She lived in a high-rise on Fifth Avenue, paid for by my father, despite her insistence that she made it on her own. The doorman recognized me and buzzed me up without question. That was the thing about the Carter name. It opened doors even when the person carrying it wanted them closed. When she opened the apartment door, her eyes widened in surprise. "Emma," she said. "What are you? How did you—" "Can we talk?" I asked. Her perfect posture faltered. She stepped aside, biting her lip. "It's a bad time." "It's never a good time with us," I said. "Let's be honest for once." She winced, but she didn't tell me to leave. The place was immaculate white furniture, gold accents, flowers arranged as if a magazine crew might drop by at any moment. But the air felt wrong, too still, too cold. Olivia wrapped her arms around herself. "I didn't expect to see you after last night." "You mean after Dad slapped me?" I said flatly. Her eyes darted away. I didn't want that. "Did you want me humiliated?" Her breath caught Emmy. "No." "Then why did you lie in front of all those people? Why did you make it sound like I attacked you?" She sank onto the edge of her sofa. "Because I panicked. You brought up the project and I wasn't ready. Dad drilled into me that I had to look in control at the party, that everyone would be watching, that I couldn't mess up." I raised a brow. "So you threw me under the bus." She stared at her hands. "I always throw you under the bus." There it was, the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. "Why?" I asked quietly. Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I'm jealous of you." I froze. "What? You think you're in my shadow?" she whispered. "But I've always been in yours. You're smarter, you're stronger. You actually understand Dad's business. You make him nervous, Emmy. You always have." "Why would I make him nervous?" I asked. Olivia swallowed hard. "Because you see through him, you always have." Her words sent a ripple of cold down my spine. Then I noticed something. Her hands were trembling. Not theatrically, not for show. This was real fear. "Liv," I said softly, "what are you scared of?" She shook her head, wiping her face. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "No," she whispered. "It matters to him." I sat down across from her. "What aren't you telling me?" She twisted the hem of her silk robe, a childhood habit she'd never grown out of. "Dad will be furious if he knows I talked to you." "That's not an answer." She closed her eyes. "He doesn't want you involved in anything. That's been true for years." "No," she said, opening her eyes again. "This is different." A tremor of dread crawled through me. "Different how?" Olivia hesitated for a long moment, then she whispered, "He thinks you're going to expose him." My breath stilled. "Expose him for what?" "I don't know," she cried. "He never tells me everything. He just said, if you ever started digging, the entire family would fall apart." "And you believed him?" "I've seen what he does to people who get in his way," she whispered. "You've seen it too." Images flashed in my mind. Employees fired for questioning him. Partners ruined the way he'd handled Olivia's accident. The way he slapped me without hesitation. "Liv," I said slowly, "you need to tell me everything." "I can't," she whispered. "I want to. But there's more. And it's not just about the accident. It's not just about the will. It's deeper." Her eyes drifted unfocused for a moment, as if she was slipping into some old memory. I touched her hand gently. "Look at me." Her gaze snapped back to mine. "Breathe. Slow down, you're safe right now. What is Dad hiding?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, lips trembling. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared of ruining us." I leaned closer. "Us is already ruined. I'm trying to save what's left." Her face crumpled. Then she whispered 3 words that ripped the air out of my lungs. "It wasn't just him." The room tilted. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. Her eyes filled. "The cover-up, the accident, the payout, the will. All of it. It wasn't just Dad. Mom was involved too." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Mom," I breathed. "Why would she—" "She told him to change the will," Olivia whispered. "She told him to make me the heir." My entire world recoiled. "That doesn't make sense," I said, shaking my head. "Mom has never favored you over me." Olivia looked at me with such raw grief that my breath caught. "Emma, she didn't do it to favor me." "Then why?" She closed her eyes, tears spilled. "Because she wanted to protect you." I felt something inside me go completely still. Protect me from what? I asked. The silence that followed was suffocating. Olivia's breath hitched. "I don't know all of it, I swear, but there was something from years ago, something about your birth, something they fought about, something they said would destroy the family if anyone ever learned the truth." My heartbeat roared in my ears. "My birth," I repeated. "Yes." She looked terrified, Mom said. "If you inherited the company, if you were put in the spotlight, someone would find out." A wave of ice washed through me. "Find out what?" Olivia shook her head rapidly. "I don't know. They never told me. They just said you couldn't be the face of the family. You couldn't be the future, that it would risk everything. Everything inside me screamed. Everything inside me knew this was it. This was the secret. The thing my father had whispered about. The thing he'd rewritten the will for. The thing he'd spent years protecting. My birth, my identity, who I truly was or wasn't. I stood up so fast the room spun. Emma. Olivia reached for me. I pulled my hand away. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Dad said you'd crumble if you knew. He doesn't get to decide what I can handle. I snapped. She flinched. I closed my eyes, inhaled slowly, and forced my voice to steady. Liv. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at them. But if I'm going to figure out what the hell is going on, I need everything you remember, every detail. She hesitated again. Then she whispered, there's one more thing. Something I overheard. But, Emma, please promise you won't hate me. I leaned in. Tell me. She swallowed hard. I heard Mom say that the night of my accident. That wasn't the first time they covered something up. My stomach dropped. What else did they cover up? Olivia wiped her cheek. Something from when you were a baby. A chill swept over my skin. What happened when I was a baby? I whispered. I don't know, she said, voice cracking. But, Mom said, she said they owed someone a favor. A big one. A life-changing one. She said Dad would do anything to keep that person quiet. My heartbeat slowed, thick, heavy, hypnotic. This was bigger than an accident. Bigger than a will. Bigger than favoritism. This was life or death, family-destroying, identity-shattering. The truth wasn't just buried. It was buried inside me. And now it was clawing its way to the surface. I stepped back, dizzy with revelation. Hey, Emma, Olivia whispered. Please don't do anything stupid. I shook my head. No. I said, my voice low, steady, deadly, calm. I'm going to do something smart. What? I looked toward the door. I'm going to ask Mom. Olivia's face drained of color. You can't. I can. You shouldn't. I have to. She stood shaking. If you push them, if you dig too deep, Dad will break you. I met her eyes. No, I said, he'll try. When I left her apartment, the world looked different. Sharper, colder, more honest. The city moved around me. Horns, sirens, voices, footsteps. But everything felt distant. My mind was a single relentless focus point. Breathe deeper, slower. Look closer. My birth. My mother. The cover-ups. The fear. The will. All of it connected. All of it pointed to one terrifying truth. My father wasn't afraid of losing money. He wasn't afraid of losing status. He wasn't afraid of the accident resurfacing. He was afraid of me knowing who I really was. And now I was done being the girl in the dark. I was coming for the truth. And nothing, not Olivia's fear, not my mother's silence, not my father's empire, was going to stop me. Not anymore. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are countless real-life betrayals, twists, and revenge stories waiting for you in the next episodes. I drove to my parents' estate like a woman possessed. No music, no distractions. Just the sound of my breath, slow, steady, counting down towards something inevitable. In deeper, out, slower focus. The sky was gray, heavy with the promise of rain. A fitting backdrop for the moment. The facade of my family's legacy would finally crack wide open. The closer I got to the mansion, the harder my heart pounded. Not with fear. Fear was familiar, almost comforting. This was something else. Something colder. Something sharp as glass. Resolve. By the time I pulled up to the wrought iron gates, my hands no longer shook. My mind was quiet, focused, ready. The guardsmen, my father hired to protect the illusion of his kingdom, opened the gate without question. I walked inside as if I belonged there, as if I still had a place in this family. Maybe I did. Maybe I never had. Maybe I was about to discover that everything had been a lie. The front door opened before I reached it. My mother stood there. Helen Carter, the soft-spoken woman who'd raised me with whispers instead of truth, who taught me how to survive storms, but never how to question the clouds that caused them. Emma, she breathed. You're early. As if this were a pleasant Sunday visit. As if I hadn't spent the last week ripping open the entire narrative of my existence. We need to talk, I said. The color drained from her face. She stepped aside. Inside quickly, not welcome home, Not my girl, just quickly like she feared someone watching. That told me everything. The living room looked the same as it always had. Tasteful, expensive, suffocating family photos lined the mantelpiece, my father accepting an award, Olivia posing in a white dress, the four of us smiling in coordinated outfits. Not a single photo of me alone, not one. My mother perched on the edge of an armchair like a bird ready to take flight. I didn't sit. Sitting felt too much like submission. You spoke to Olivia, she said quietly. Yes, I answered. She told me enough. Her hands twisted in her lap. I was afraid she would. Why, I demanded. What are you so afraid of me knowing? Her breath caught Emma. No. My voice cracked like a whip. No more half-truths. No more silence. I want the truth. All of it. She swallowed, eyes shimmering. Your father won't like this. I don't care what he likes. She flinched as if struck. Maybe she expected me to stay the obedient daughter forever. Not today. What happened when I was a baby, I asked. Her lips trembled. Emma, please. Tell me. She covered her face for a moment, inhaling sharply, then exhaled with a trembling sob. You were never supposed to know. I stepped closer. Know what? She lowered her hands, and in that fragile, breaking expression, I saw the truth before she even spoke. You're not biologically your father's child. Silence dropped like a guillotine. My breath left my body all at once. What? My voice sounded distant, hollow. What are you talking about? She clasped her hands, knuckles white. I had an affair. I blinked, dizzy. What? Before you were born. Her voice broke. It was a mistake. One I regretted. Your father and I were going through a terrible time, and I made a horrible choice. My heart hammered so loudly I could barely hear her. You're saying Dad isn't my father? She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, biologically. No. My legs trembled, but I forced myself to stand tall. Who is? Her eyes filled with terror. That's what can never get out, Emma. He's a powerful man, more powerful than your father even now if people found out you were his. His what? I snapped. His secret, his mistake. She closed her eyes, shaking. His daughter. The world tilted. My pulse roared. I struggled for air. Who? I whispered. Before she could speak, a door slammed behind us. We both jumped. My father stood in his doorway, face red with fury. Jaw clenched so tightly the muscles twitched. Enough, he barked. That's enough. My mother shrank back, but I didn't. We're talking, I said. His eyes narrowed. No, you're interrogating, and she's telling you things that will ruin this family. This family ruined itself a long time ago. His gaze darkened. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. I said I know about Olivia's accident. I know about the cover-up. I know about the payout. I know about the will you changed to protect her. He stiffened, and I continued. I know that Mom made you do it because of me. Because of whatever you've been hiding about my birth. My father's jaw clenched harder. Helen, he growled, stop talking. She flinched but stayed silent. I stepped between them. No, she's done staying quiet and so am I. He moved closer, towering over me. For a moment I smelled his cologne, the one he always wore to intimidate during meetings. That familiar scent used to make me shrink. Not anymore. You have no idea what you're doing, he said. I'm uncovering the truth, I said. You remember the truth, right? The thing you've spent your whole life burying. His eyes flashed. You think a few documents and rumors make you dangerous? I think I said slowly that you're terrified of me. His expression froze. A crack in his armor. A crack only someone who'd known him intimately could recognize. I leaned forward, terrified of what I could reveal. Terrified of what I might already know. Terrified of who my biological father is. His face twisted. Helen should have kept her mouth shut. Telling her to be silent has worked for decades, I said. But not anymore. His voice dropped to a low, venomous whisper. You are not my blood. Then why, I whispered back, did you raise me like a threat? Silence again. Thick, suffocating electric. Finally, he stepped back, chest heaving, eyes blazing. You want to know the truth, he spat. Fine. The man who fathered you was the most dangerous mistake of your mother's life. A man with resources, power, and enemies. When you were born, we were warned. If anyone ever discovered you were his child, you would be taken or used. A cold chill swept through me. Who warned you? I asked. He hesitated, but just for a moment, long enough for me to see the fear in his eyes. His people, he said, his associates. I stared at him. You're saying I belong to a criminal? No. He shook his head sharply. He wasn't a criminal, he was worse. My voice barely came out. Who was he? He exhaled shakily. A government contractor, a whistleblower, a man who leaked secrets that threatened national security. He disappeared before you were born. Some say he was killed. Some say he's still alive. We never knew. I froze. You covered it up, I whispered. To protect you, my mother said through tears. To keep you safe. To keep your image clean, I shot back at my father. To keep your legacy intact. To hide the fact that your perfect family was built on a lie. He slammed his hand on the table. Everything I did for this family. No, I said quietly. You did everything for yourself. Thunder cracked outside. Rain slammed against the windows. The storm had finally broken, and so had we. I left the estate without another word. My mother called after me. My father shouted my name. I didn't turn back. The rain soaked through my clothes as I walked to my car, but I barely felt it. I was numb, hollow. And yet, free. Ethan called as soon as I sat behind the wheel. Emma, are you okay? I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped inside me for years. No, I said, but I will be. What happened? I found out the truth. A shaky exhale. All of it. He was quiet for a moment. Then what now? I closed my eyes and let the storm wash over the windshield. Now the real story began. I rewrite everything I said. My life, my future. And the Carter legacy. And your father. He doesn't get to define me anymore. And Olivia, I hesitated, then whispered, I'll help her escape him if she wants it. And your mother. That answer took longer. She made her choices, I murmured. Now I'll make mine. When I opened my eyes, lightning illuminated the road ahead. I'm meeting with Laura tomorrow, I said. We're going to prepare for the expose and the will contest. And whatever comes after. You're really doing this, Ethan said softly. You're taking them down. No, I said. Lightning flashed again. I'm setting myself free. A beat of silence. Then Ethan said, I'm with you. Every step. And for the first time in my life, I believed someone. As I drove away from the estate, the storm finally began to ease. The sky opened, letting a thin line of light break through the clouds. I touched the spot on my cheek where my father had struck me. The sting was gone, but the memory remained, and the meaning had changed. The slap was no longer the symbol of my shame. It was the spark that lit the fuse. My father once said I was a disappointment. He was wrong. I was the one thing he couldn't control, the one truth he couldn't bury, the one legacy he never expected. I am not your shame, I whispered into the quiet car. I am your ending. And my own beginning. And with that, I drove into the rain-washed horizon. Not as Emma Carter, the obedient daughter, but as the woman who finally knew the truth of her blood, her past, and her power. And I would write my story from here,